My commercial properties sold for $42 million. I rushed home early to share the news with my wife. When I arrived, I heard my attorney's voice from our bedroom. They were not having an affair. It was something much worse. So then I did something that would make the devil himself shiver. My name is Harrison Thorne. I am 72 years old. If you looked at me, you would see a man in an expensive suit with gray hair and tired eyes. You might think I am just another retiree ready to play golf and fade away. You would be wrong. I built a logistics empire in Chicago from a single rusted truck and a shovel. I have fought unions. I have fought competitors. I have fought the city council. But nothing prepared me for the war I started inside my own house last Tuesday. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to love you. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The air in Chicago was crisp and cold, the kind of cold that wakes you up. I sat in the boardroom of the investment firm holding a pen that felt heavier than a sledgehammer. $42 million. That was the final offer for my chain of warehouses. After 50 years of grit and grease and missed birthdays and late nights, I was finally cashing out. I signed the papers. My hand did not shake. I felt a weight lift off my chest that I had been carrying since I was 22. I walked out of that skyscraper feeling like a young man again. I did not call my wife Patricia. I wanted to see her face. We have been married for 40 years. 40 years of her tolerating my long hours. 40 years of me promising that one day we would stop. One day we would travel to Italy. One day we would just be husband and wife, not business partners. Today was that day. I stopped at a jeweler on Michigan Avenue and bought a diamond necklace. It cost more than my first house. I did not care. I wanted to spoil her. I drove my Cadillac home to Barrington. It is a quiet suburb, wealthy, private, the kind of place where neighbors smile but do not talk. I pulled into the driveway at 3 in the afternoon. I was supposed to be at a celebratory dinner with the buyers until 8. I was 5 hours early. The house was silent. It is a sprawling estate too big for 2 people, but Patricia insisted we needed the space for when our son Preston visited. I let myself in the front door. The foyer smelled of lilies and lemon polish. I loosened my tie. I held the velvet box with the necklace in one hand and a bottle of vintage champagne in the other. "Patricia, honey, are you home?" I called out softly. No answer. I walked toward the stairs. The house felt different today. It felt cold. As I reached the landing on the second floor, I heard a sound. It was a laugh. A deep, throaty laugh that I knew better than my own. It was Gavin. My blood ran cold. Gavin Pierce was my attorney. He was more than that. He was the son I wished Preston was. I paid for his law school. I brought him into the firm. I trusted him with every contract, every secret, every dime. Why was Gavin in my bedroom on a Tuesday afternoon? My mind immediately went to the worst place. An affair. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I stepped closer to the master bedroom door. It was cracked open just an inch. I could not see them, but I could hear them clearly. I expected the sounds of betrayal. I expected the sounds of passion. But what I heard was the sound of paperwork, the rustling of pages. "Just sign here," Patricia Gavin said. His voice did not sound professional. It sounded eager, predatory. Patricia sighed. It was a sound of relief, not pleasure. She said finally, "I thought the old fool would never sell. Do you have the confirmation?" Gavin chuckled. "The wire transfer is scheduled. It goes into escrow for 48 hours, then it hits the joint account. Once the money is there, we trigger the clause." I stood frozen in the hallway. The champagne bottle felt like ice in my hand. Trigger the clause. What were they talking about? Patricia spoke again, and her voice dripped with a venom I had never heard in 40 years. I cannot stand another day of his stories, Gavin. He tells the same stories about the trucks and the mud. He smells like oil and old age. It is suffocating. Gavin replied soothingly. I know, but the medical report is ready. Dr. Stevens signed off on it this morning. Advanced dementia. Incompetence. We have witnesses lined up to testify about his erratic behavior. Once he is declared incapacitated, you get power of attorney over the liquid assets. That is $42 million, Patricia. And Harrison goes to that facility in Vermont. The secure one. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I leaned against the wall to keep from falling. Dementia. Incompetence. They were not just stealing my money. They were stealing my life. They were planning to lock me away. A facility in Vermont. That meant a nursing home. A prison for the unwanted. Patricia laughed again. It was a cruel sound. Will he be able to make calls? I do not want him calling me crying about coming home. Gavin answered quickly. No phone privileges for high-risk patients. We will say he is a danger to himself. He will be medicated. He won't even know what day it is. You will be free, Patricia. We will be free. I realized then that my hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from a rage so pure and hot it almost blinded me. I looked at the door. I wanted to kick it open. I wanted to smash the champagne bottle over Gavin's head. I wanted to grab Patricia by the shoulders and ask her how she could throw away 40 years for money she didn't even earn. I took a step forward. The floorboard under my foot creaked. A loud, sharp sound in the quiet hallway. The voices inside stopped instantly. Patricia whispered. What was that? Is he home? My heart stopped. I held my breath. I stood perfectly still. If they found me now, everything was over. They would claim I was spying. They would say I was paranoid. It would just prove their case for my insanity. Gavin spoke up, his voice tense. Relax. It is just the house settling. Or the wind. The old man is stuck at a dinner in the city. He won't be back for hours. The old man. Is that what I was to them? A checkbook with a pulse. An obstacle to be removed. I slowly took a step back. Then another. I moved like a ghost in the house I paid for. I went down the stairs one by one. My knees felt weak, but my mind was sharpening. The shock was fading, and something else was taking its place. Resolve. I walked out the front door and gently closed it. I walked to my car. I sat in the driver's seat and stared at the steering wheel. I looked at the velvet box in my hand, the diamond necklace. I opened the window and threw it into the bushes. I reached into the glove compartment and found a pack of cigarettes I kept for emergencies. I haven't smoked in 10 years. I lit one. My hands were trembling as I brought the flame to the tip. I took a deep drag. The smoke burned my lungs, and it felt good. It made me feel alive. They wanted a senile old man. They wanted someone confused and weak. They wanted a victim. I looked up at the bedroom window. I could imagine them up there celebrating their victory, laughing at the stupid old trucker who worked himself to the bone so they could live like kings. I put the car in reverse. I did not turn on the radio. I needed silence. I needed to think. I drove away from the house. I was not going back to the city. I was not going to the police. Not yet. The police would ask for proof. I had no recording. I had no documents. It was my word against a respected lawyer and a devoted wife. And they had a doctor's note saying I was crazy. No. I needed something better than the police. I needed leverage. Gavin said the money would be in escrow for 48 hours. 48 hours. That was my window. That was the countdown. In 48 hours, I would cease to be a man and become a patient. I checked my watch. 3:30. The banks closed at 5. I wiped the tears from my eyes. There were only a few, but they were the last tears I would ever shed for Patricia Thorne. I pulled out my phone. I dialed a number I hadn't used in 5 years. A voice answered on the third ring. Rough. Suspicious. Yeah. It is Harrison, I said. There was a long silence. Then the voice laughed. A dry, humorless sound. Harrison Thorne. I thought you were dead or retired. I am not dead, Marcus. But I might be by Friday if you don't help me. Marcus was a forensic accountant, the best in the business. He was also a man who hated Gavin Pierce almost as much as I did right now. Gavin had thrown Marcus under the bus years ago to save his own skin on a tax audit. Marcus went to prison for 2 years. Gavin got a promotion. I need you to meet me, I said. Where? Marcus asked. The diner on 4th. And Marcus, bring your laptop. We are going to rob a bank. I hung up the phone. I looked at my face in the rearview mirror. The tired eyes were gone. The old man was gone. The wolf was back. I stepped on the gas. The engine roared. The hunt had begun. I sat in my car at the end of the driveway for 10 minutes. I watched the windows of my own house. I had to prepare myself. I had to push the rage down deep into my gut, where it burned like swallowed coal. The man who drove away earlier was a warrior ready for battle. But the man who walked back through that front door had to be a victim. I had to be the confused, tired old man they wanted me to be. If I showed even an inch of strength, they would panic and speed up their timeline. I needed them to feel safe. I needed them to think they had already won. I adjusted the rearview mirror. I slumped my shoulders forward. I practiced a tremor in my right hand. It was not hard. My body was already vibrating with adrenaline, but I channeled it into a pathetic shake. I rubbed my eyes until they were red. I looked like a man defeated by time. I took a deep breath. It tasted like gasoline and betrayal. I opened the car door and shuffled toward the house. The front door unlocked with a heavy click. I stepped into the foyer. I did not call out this time. I walked slowly, dragging my feet slightly on the hardwood floor. I wanted them to hear the sound of an old man walking. Patricia appeared from the living room almost instantly. She was wearing a silk blouse and her hair was perfectly coiffed. She looked beautiful. It made me sick. She rushed over to me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Harrison, you are back early," she said. Her voice was high, too high. It was the voice you use when you are talking to a toddler or a dog you are about to put down. I looked at her and blinked slowly. The meeting ended early. I mumbled. My voice was raspy. I let a little confusion seep into my tone. I felt dizzy, Patricia. I just wanted to come home. She took my arm. Her grip was firm, possessive. "Oh, you poor thing. Come sit down. Gavin is here. He stopped by to drop off some paperwork. Isn't that nice of him?" I let her lead me into the living room. Gavin was standing by the fireplace. He had his suit jacket buttoned. He looked every inch the successful attorney. The attorney I made. He stepped forward and extended a hand. "Good to see you, Harrison," Gavin said. He pumped my hand. His palm was dry. He was looking at me, searching for signs of suspicion. I gave him nothing. I just looked at him with dull, watery eyes. "Hello, Gavin," I said. "Why are you here on a Tuesday?" He laughed. A short, nervous sound. "Just business, Harrison. Always business. Patricia, why don't you get him some coffee?" He looks pale. Patricia bustled off to the kitchen. I sank into my leather armchair. It was my favorite chair. I had read 1,000 books in this chair. Now it felt like an electric chair. Gavin sat opposite me on the sofa. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents. They were clipped together with a heavy black binder clip. "While Patricia gets the coffee, we should get this out of the way," Gavin said. He placed the stack on the coffee table and pushed it toward me. "What is this?" I asked. I squinted at the papers. I did not need to squint. I had 20/20 vision with my contacts in. But Harrison the invalid had failing eyes. "It is just the tax forms for the sale," Gavin said smoothly. His lie was practiced. He did not even blink. "Because the sale price was so high, we need to structure the assets into a tax-sheltered trust immediately. If we wait until the wire hits the account, you could lose 40% to capital gains. We need your signature to authorize the transfer of management rights." Just a formality. Management rights. That was the legal term for handing over my life. If I signed these papers, I was not just saving on taxes. I was signing away my freedom. I was giving them the legal power to commit me to an institution and liquidate my accounts. Patricia returned with a tray, a steaming mug of black coffee and a plate of cookies. She set it down on the table next to the papers. "Here you go, darling," she said. She sat next to Gavin. They were a team, a united front against the enemy. And I was the enemy. "Drink your coffee, Harrison. Then sign the papers so Gavin can go home to his family," Patricia said. I reached for the mug. My hand shook violently. This time I did not have to pretend. The anger was making my muscles spasm. I lifted the heavy ceramic mug. I watched the steam rise. I looked at Gavin. He was leaning forward, holding a pen out to me. He looked like a vulture waiting for the animal to stop moving. "I need to read them first," I said softly. Patricia sighed. It was a loud, exasperated sound. "Harrison, do not be difficult. You know you will just get confused. The legal language is too complicated. You have always trusted Gavin. Just sign the line where the sticker is." "I trust Gavin," I repeated. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. I leaned forward. I held the mug in my right hand. I moved my left hand toward the papers. Then I let my right hand spasm. It was a calculated accident. I jerked my wrist. The mug tipped. Hot black coffee splashed across the table. It soaked into the thick white paper. It spread like a dark stain over the black text, covering the signature line, covering the clauses about mental incapacity, covering their lies. "Oh no," I cried out. I dropped the mug. It shattered on the floor. Patricia shrieked. She jumped up. "Harrison, look what you did." Gavin stared at the ruined documents. His jaw tightened. He closed his eyes for a second, trying to control his temper. That was the original copy Harrison. "I am sorry," I stammered. I pulled a handkerchief from my pocket and tried to dab at the mess, making it worse. "I am so clumsy. My hands, they just do not work like they used to." Patricia grabbed my wrist. Her nails dug into my skin. It hurt. "Stop it. You are making a mess. Just stop." She looked at Gavin. Her mask slipped for a second. I saw pure hatred in her eyes. "I told you he is getting worse, Gavin. He cannot even hold a cup of coffee. How can he manage an estate?" Gavin took a deep breath. He forced a smile back onto his face. "It is okay. It is just coffee. I have the digital files at the office. I can print a fresh set. It will just take me an hour to go back and return." I sank back into the chair, clutching my shaking hand. "I am sorry," I whispered. "I am so useless." "You are not useless, Harrison. You are just sick," Patricia said. Her voice was cold. "Go upstairs and clean yourself up. You smell like coffee." Gavin will be back in an hour. We will do it then. And Harrison, try not to break anything else. I nodded obediently. I stood up slowly. I walked past them. I could feel their eyes boring into my back. I heard Gavin whisper as I reached the stairs. He is deteriorating fast. We need to get that signature tonight. If he wakes up tomorrow and forgets who we are, it will be a nightmare to get it done legally. Don't worry, Patricia whispered back. I will make sure he signs, even if I have to guide his hand. I climbed the stairs, one heavy step at a time. I reached the top landing and turned toward the master bedroom. I walked into the bathroom and locked the door behind me. The silence in the bathroom was absolute. I turned on the faucet. I let the cold water run. I needed the sound to cover me. I leaned over the sink and splashed water on my face. I scrubbed at my skin, trying to wash away the feeling of Patricia's touch, trying to wash away the feeling of playing the fool. I grabbed a towel and dried my face. Then I looked up. I looked into the mirror. The man staring back at me was not Harrison the invalid. He was not Harrison the victim. The redness was gone from my eyes. The confusion was wiped away. My spine straightened. My shoulders squared. The face in the mirror was hard. It was granite. It was the face of a man who had negotiated deals with mobsters and politicians. I stared into my own pupils. I saw the reflection of a cold calculation. They thought I was broken. They thought I was a crumbling building waiting to be demolished. They did not know that the foundation was made of steel. You want a war, I whispered to my reflection. My voice was steady. It was deep. You brought the war into my house. You put it in my bed. You put it in my coffee. I gripped the edge of the marble sink until my knuckles turned white. I looked at my watch. I had bought myself an hour, maybe 2. Gavin had to drive to the city and back. That was my window. I did not have time to feel pain. I did not have time to mourn my marriage. I had to move. I opened the bathroom cabinet. Behind the bottles of cologne and shaving cream there was a false back panel. I had installed it 10 years ago, not for money, but for information. I popped the panel open. Inside was a burner phone and a small black notebook containing account numbers I had kept secret even from Gavin. I took the phone. I looked at the mirror one last time. Goodbye, Harrison the husband, I said. I unlocked the bathroom door. The old man stayed in the mirror. The predator walked out. I had work to do, and God help anyone who stood in my way. I walked down the stairs and the smell of roast beef and expensive wine hit me. It should have been a comforting smell. It was the smell of Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings. But tonight, it smelled like a trap. I paused at the bottom of the staircase to adjust my cuffs. I needed to make sure my hands were still shaking just enough to be convincing, but not enough to spill the soup. I was about to have dinner with my son and his wife, and I knew that every bite I took would be watched. Every word I spoke would be analyzed for signs of decay. I walked into the dining room. The chandelier was dimmed. My wife Patricia had set the table with the good china, the plates with the gold rim that we only used for Thanksgiving. She was really pulling out all the stops. Sitting at the table were the 2 people I had hoped would carry on my legacy, my son Preston and his wife Tiffany. Preston looked tired. He had dark circles under his eyes that even the dim light could not hide. He was wearing a suit that was too expensive for his salary as a junior vice president at my firm. A job he only had because I created it for him. He was tapping his foot nervously against the leg of the chair. When he saw me, he stopped. He forced a smile. It was the same fake smile his mother wore. "Hi, Dad," Preston said. "You look rested?" I sat down at the head of the table. I moved slowly. I let out a heavy sigh as I lowered myself into the chair. "I am not rested, son," I said. My voice was low and gravelly. I feel like I have been running a marathon. My head. It feels cloudy today. Tiffany chimed in immediately. She was wearing a dress that probably cost $3,000. She swirled her wine glass and looked at me with eyes that were calculating. "Well, you have been working too hard, Harrison," she said. "At your age, you should be relaxing. You should be somewhere warm. Florida, maybe. Or that nice facility Patricia was talking about. The one with the gardens." I looked at her. She did not even try to hide it. She was already shipping me off. I picked up my napkin and unfolded it with trembling fingers. "I do not know, Tiffany. The business needs me. There are so many details. The new contracts, the warehouse sale. I do not know if I can just walk away." Preston leaned forward. His desperation was palpable. He looked like a drowning man reaching for a life raft. "Dad, that is exactly why you need to step back," he said. His voice was urgent. "Gavin and Mom told me about the medical report. You are not well. You are forgetting things. You are making mistakes. Let us handle it. I can take over the accounts. I can manage the sale proceeds. I have been watching you for years. I know what to do." I looked at my son. I saw the sweat on his forehead. I saw the way his hand gripped his wine glass until his knuckles were white. He did not want to run the business. He had never shown an interest in the logistics of trucking or warehousing. He found it boring. He wanted the money. He wanted the power without the work. I sliced a piece of roast beef. The knife scraped against the china. It was a harsh sound in the quiet room. "You think you are ready, Preston?" I asked. "It is a lot of money. $42 million. It is a heavy burden." Preston's eyes lit up at the mention of the number. It was like seeing a junkie spot a needle. "I am ready, Dad," he said. "I am your son. You can trust me. Mom and we just want what is best for you. We want you to be safe." Safe. That was their word of the day. They wanted me safe in a padded room, while they spent my life's work. I took a bite of the beef. It was dry. I chewed slowly, giving myself time to think. I decided it was time to test them. I wanted to see just how far they would go to validate my incompetence. I turned to my daughter-in-law. I looked her right in the eye. "You know Jennifer," I said. The table went silent. Her name was Tiffany. We had known her for 10 years. I continued pretending not to notice the silence. "Jennifer, I was thinking about what you said. About the gardens. Maybe you are right. Maybe this house is too big for me now." Tiffany looked at Patricia. Then she looked at Preston. A slow smirk spread across her face. She did not correct me. She did not say, "Dad, my name is Tiffany." She accepted the error because it proved I was losing my mind. It was exactly what they wanted. "Oh, Harrison," she said softly, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "I think that is a very sensible idea. This house is so old-fashioned anyway. The dark wood, the heavy drapes. It is depressing. Once you are settled in the new place, Preston and I can take care of this house. We were thinking of opening it up, knocking down some walls, modernizing it. Maybe putting in a pool where your rose garden is. My rose garden. The garden I planted with my own mother 50 years ago. The garden where I scattered my mother's ashes. She wanted to dig it up for a swimming pool. I felt a flash of heat in my chest. I wanted to slam my fist on the table. I wanted to tell her to get out of my house, but I didn't. I just nodded vacantly. "That sounds nice," I mumbled. A pool. That would be nice for the grandchildren, if you ever have them." Preston laughed nervously. "One thing at a time, Dad. Let's get the paperwork signed first. Gavin said he is coming back tonight, right, Mom? Patricia nodded. She was watching me like a hawk. Yes. He went to get fresh copies. He will be here within the hour. Harrison, you will sign them tonight, won't you? For Preston. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. I remembered teaching him to ride a bike. I remembered paying for his first car. I remembered bailing him out of trouble in college when he got caught with drugs. I had always cleaned up his messes. I had always hoped he would grow out of it. But sitting here tonight, I realized he hadn't. He had just found a bigger mess. And he was willing to bury his father to clean it up. I will do whatever is necessary, I said. Suddenly, Preston stood up. He patted his pockets. I need to use the restroom, he said. I will be right back. He hurried out of the room. In his haste, he left his phone sitting on the table next to his plate. I watched him go. I waited a beat. Then I let my fork clatter onto the floor. Oh, I said, my clumsy hands again. I bent down to pick up the fork. As I leaned over, I brought my face close to the table level, right next to Preston's phone. At that exact moment, the screen lit up with a notification. It was a text message. The preview was clearly visible on the lock screen. My heart hammered against my ribs. I read the words. They were not from a friend. They were not from a client. They were from a number saved simply as the shark. The message read, "You have 48 hours before I take a finger. Pay up or you will be typing with your nose." I froze. I stared at the glowing screen until it went black. A finger. Preston was not just greedy. He was in deep. He was drowning in gambling debt. That was why he was so desperate. That was why he needed the money now. He wasn't just trying to get rich. He was trying to save his own skin. And he was willing to sacrifice me to do it. He was going to sell his own father to a mental institution to pay off a bookie. I picked up the fork and sat back up. My face was pale, but this time I wasn't acting. The horror of it was real. Patricia looked at me. "Are you okay, Harrison? You look like you saw a ghost." I looked at the empty doorway where my son had disappeared. "I am fine," I said. "I just realized something." "What is that?" Tiffany asked, sipping her wine. "I realized that family really is everything," I said. Preston walked back into the room. He looked relieved. He sat down and checked his phone. He shoved it quickly into his pocket. "Ready for dessert, Dad?" he asked. I smiled. It was a cold smile, a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "No, son," I said. "I am full. I think I will go wait for Gavin in the study. I have some thinking to do." I stood up. I walked out of the dining room. I did not look back. I knew exactly what I had to do now. There was no mercy left in my heart. Not for Patricia. Not for Tiffany. And God help me, not even for my son. They wanted the money. They wanted the house. They wanted control. Well, they were about to get a lesson in control. I walked toward the study where my safe was waiting. But I wasn't going to the safe. I was going to the back door. I had a meeting to get to, and a bank to rob. The house was silent as a tomb. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 2 times. I had been sitting in the dark in the guest bedroom for 3 hours, waiting for the rhythm of the house to settle into sleep. I was not sleeping. I was not resting. I was sharpening my mind like a knife. I stood up from the edge of the bed. My knees cracked, but I ignored the pain. I was wearing my dark trousers and a black sweater. I felt like a burglar in my own home. In a way, I was. I was stealing back the truth. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. The carpet swallowed the sound of my footsteps. I moved past the master bedroom. I could hear the faint sound of snoring. Patricia. She was sleeping soundly, dreaming of her new life without me, dreaming of the trips she would take and the parties she would throw once the nuisance of her husband was locked away. I crept down the stairs, clinging to the banister. Every shadow looked like a person. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a gunshot. I made it to the ground floor and turned toward the study. This used to be my sanctuary. It was where I planned the expansion of my trucking fleet. It was where I smoked cigars and read history books. But in the last few months, Gavin had taken it over. He claimed he needed a dedicated space to manage my estate planning. Now I knew he just needed a command center for his coup. I slipped inside and closed the door softly behind me. I did not turn on the lights. I pulled a small flashlight from my pocket and clamped it between my teeth. The beam cut through the darkness, landing on the large oak desk. Gavin was arrogant. He left files scattered on the surface. But I knew the real dirt would not be left out in the open. I moved behind the desk. There was a credenza against the wall, a heavy mahogany piece with a built-in locking file cabinet. That was where he kept the sensitive documents. I crouched down. I tried the handle. Locked. I looked at the keypad. I punched in the code Patricia had used for 20 years, her mother's birthday. The light blinked red. I tried our anniversary. Red. I tried Preston's birthday. Red. Of course. They had changed the codes. They locked me out of my own life. I sat back on my heels. A younger man might have panicked. A desperate man might have tried to smash the lock. But I was not just a businessman. I started my life as a mechanic. I spent 20 years under the hoods of diesel trucks, fixing engines with nothing but a wrench and grit. I knew how things were put together, and I knew how to take them apart. I did not need the code. I just needed to bypass the mechanism. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small flathead screwdriver I had swiped from the utility drawer in the kitchen earlier. I shined the light on the hinges of the cabinet door. They were external hinges, decorative but sturdy. Gavin chose form over function. That was his mistake. I wedged the screwdriver into the top hinge pin. I tapped the handle gently with the palm of my hand. It didn't budge. It was painted shut. "Come on," I whispered through gritted teeth. I pushed harder. I felt the paint crack. I applied pressure, leveraging the tool against the wood. My hand slipped and the screwdriver gouged into the mahogany. I froze, waiting for a noise. Silence. I tried again. This time the pin popped up about an inch. I pulled it out with my fingers. I repeated the process on the bottom hinge. It was easier this time. With both pins removed, the door was no longer attached to the frame on the right side. I carefully pried it open, swinging it backward against the lock. Access granted. I shined the light inside. Hanging folders. Dozens of them. I flipped through the tabs. Tax returns. Insurance. Deeds. Then I saw a red folder at the very back. It had no label. I pulled it out and opened it on the floor. The first document was the medical evaluation. I recognized the letterhead. Dr. Stevens. He was a society doctor, a man who spent more time at the country club than the hospital. I scanned the text. Patient exhibits severe cognitive decline, disorientation, aggressive outbursts, inability to manage basic hygiene. Lies. All lies. But then I saw the signature. It looked shaky. I squinted. I had seen Dr. Stevens's signature on bills before. It was usually a flamboyant loop. This was tight and small. It was a forgery. Or maybe Stevens was so drunk when he signed it he couldn't hold the pen. Either way, this was fraud. I turned the page. The next document was a draft of a new trust agreement. I read the distribution clause and my stomach turned over. Upon the incapacitation of Harrison Thorne, the assets shall be divided as follows. 60% to Gavin Pierce acting as primary trustee for administrative fees and management. 40% to Patricia Thorne. I read it again. 60 for Gavin. 40 for Patricia. Where was Preston? I frantically flipped through the pages looking for my son's name. I found it in a small paragraph on the last page. Preston Thorne shall receive a monthly stipend of $2,000 subject to the approval of the primary trustee. No access to principal capital. I sat there in the dark, stunned. My son was selling me out for a fortune, and he wasn't even going to get it. He was drowning in debt, owing money to sharks, and he thought this deal would save him. But his mother and his lawyer had cut him out completely. They were going to let him starve. Patricia was betraying her husband and her son for a man who was taking the lion's share of the money. It was brutal. It was evil. And it was perfect. I pulled out my phone and started snapping photos of every page. The flash was too bright, so I used the flashlight beam to illuminate the text. Click, click, click. I captured the fake medical report. I captured the theft of the estate. I captured the betrayal of my son. This was the ammunition I needed. This proved it wasn't just a family dispute. It was a conspiracy. It was grand larceny. I was just about to close the folder when the room suddenly flooded with light. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. The light wasn't from the ceiling. It was coming from the hallway. The door to the study which I had shut was now opening. A beam of yellow light from the corridor spilled across the carpet, inching closer to where I sat behind the desk. I heard the soft thud of footsteps. Bare feet on wood. Then a voice, sleepy and irritated. "Gavin, are you down here?" It was Patricia. She was coming in. If she saw me crouching behind the desk with the lock broken and the files exposed, the game was over. She would scream. She would call the police and say I was having a violent episode. They would sedate me before I could show anyone the photos. I scrambled backward on my hands and knees. The desk offered some cover, but not enough. The credenza was open. She would see it instantly. I looked around frantically. To my left were the heavy velvet drapes covering the French doors that led to the garden. They were thick floor-to-ceiling curtains. I rolled my body toward the window. I grabbed the fabric and pulled it around me just as Patricia stepped fully into the room. I pressed myself against the cold glass of the door. I held the folder tight to my chest. I could smell the dust in the fabric. I could hear my own heart beating like a drum in my ears. Thump, thump, thump. I peered through the tiny crack between the drapes. Patricia stood in the doorway. She was wearing a silk robe. She looked around the room. Her eyes swept over the desk. Then they stopped at the credenza. She frowned. She took a step forward. I gripped the screwdriver in my pocket. If she found me, I would have to run. I would have to smash the glass door and run into the night. An old man running from his wife in his pajamas. She walked toward the desk. She reached out and touched the cabinet door. Because I had pried it from the hinge side, it looked slightly askew, but from her angle it might just look like it wasn't closed properly. She paused. She tilted her head. She yawned, covering her mouth with her hand. Gavin must have left it unlocked. She muttered to herself. Careless idiot. She didn't notice the missing pins. She didn't look down at the floor where a few flecks of wood varnish had fallen. She was tired and she was arrogant. She believed so thoroughly in her own victory that she couldn't imagine anyone fighting back. She turned around and walked to the light switch on the wall. Click. The room went dark again. I heard her footsteps recede down the hallway. I heard the stairs creak as she went back up to bed. I let out a breath that I had been holding for a minute. My legs were shaking so hard I slid down the glass door until I hit the floor. I was safe. For now. I looked at the phone in my hand. The glowing screen showed the photo of the contract. The contract that gave Gavin everything. I had the evidence. I had the truth. But I couldn't just leave. I had to put the cabinet back together. I had to leave no trace. I crawled back to the credenza. My hands were steady now. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard focus. I pushed the hinge pins back in. I used the handle of the screwdriver to tap them flush. I wiped away the wood chips with my sleeve. I placed the folder back exactly where I found it. I stood up. I was a ghost again. I had the weapon. Now I needed to find the soldiers to fire it. I checked the time. 4 in the morning. Marcus would be awake. The banks opened in 5 hours. I slipped out of the study and into the night. The hunter was awake and the trap was about to be sprung. I told Patricia I had a physical therapy appointment at 8 in the morning. She did not even look up from her iPad. She just waved a hand and told me to be careful on the stairs. She was already mentally redecorating the house, spending money she did not have yet. I walked out to the garage and got into my car. I did not drive to the upscale clinic in the city center. Instead, I turned the wheel toward the south side, toward a neighborhood where luxury sedans like mine usually ended up stripped on blocks. I was looking for Marcus Dane. 5 years ago, Marcus was the brightest forensic accountant in Chicago. He could find a missing dime in a billion-dollar ledger, but he was also proud. When Gavin Pierce needed a scapegoat for an offshore tax scandal involving one of our biggest clients, he chose Marcus. Gavin framed him beautifully. Marcus went to federal prison for 2 years and lost his license. I had stood by and watched it happen. I had believed Gavin when he said Marcus was guilty. That guilt sat heavy in my stomach as I pulled up to a crumbling brick apartment complex. I checked the address again. This was it. The windows were barred. The sidewalk was covered in broken glass. I took a deep breath. I was walking into the lion's den wearing a suit made of money. I locked the car and walked quickly to the entrance. The buzzer for apartment 4B was missing the button, so I just pressed the exposed wire. A minute later, the door buzzed. I walked up 4 flights of stairs that smelled of stale beer and boiled cabbage. When I reached the top, a door stood open. A man was leaning against the frame. He was younger than me, maybe 50, but he looked aged by hard time. His hair was gray and thinning. He wore a stained t-shirt and held a cheap cigarette between yellowed fingers. "Harrison Thorne," Marcus said. His voice was like grinding gears. "I should throw you down these stairs right now." I did not flinch. I deserved that. "Hello, Marcus," I said. "May I come in?" He took a long drag of his cigarette and blew the smoke directly into my face. "You have some nerve coming here. Did Gavin send you to gloat? Or did he send you to make sure I am still miserable?" "Gavin is trying to put me in a cage just like he did to you," I said. Marcus froze. The cynical smile dropped from his face. He stepped back and gestured for me to enter. The apartment was small and dark. Stacks of newspapers and legal journals lined the walls. Computer monitors were set up on a folding table humming in the corner. Marcus kicked a pile of laundry off a chair. "Sit," he commanded. "Talk fast. I have a shift at the warehouse in an hour." I sat down. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos I had taken the night before. I placed the phone on the table between us. "I sold my company yesterday for $42 million, I said. "Gavin and my wife have forged medical documents declaring me mentally incompetent. They plan to have me committed to a facility tomorrow. Gavin takes 60% as trustee. My wife takes 40%. I get nothing but a padded room." Marcus picked up the phone. He scrolled through the images. He zoomed in on the fake signature. He looked at the trust agreement. I watched his eyes. They were scanning the documents with the speed and precision of the expert he used to be. He let out a low whistle. "This is dirty. Even for Gavin, this is dirty. He is getting greedy." He put the phone down and looked at me. His eyes were cold. "So what?" he asked. "You want my pity. You watched him destroy my life, Harrison. You signed the checks. You let him ruin me because it was convenient for business. Now the shark you kept as a pet is biting your hand. That sounds like justice to me." I nodded. "You are right. I was blind. I was arrogant. I thought Gavin was loyal. I was wrong. And I am paying for it. My son is in on it too. My whole life is a lie, Marcus." I leaned forward. I looked him dead in the eye. "But I am not here for pity. I am here for revenge. And I am here to offer you a job." Marcus laughed, a bitter barking sound. "I cannot work for you, Harrison. I am a felon. No license, remember. I am not hiring you as an accountant," I said. "I am hiring you as a consultant. I need you to help me steal my own money back before it hits that joint account. I need you to help me destroy Gavin Pierce." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. It was thick. I had emptied my personal safe before leaving the house. There is $10,000 cash in there, just for listening. If you help me pull this off, I will give you $1 million tax-free, and I will give you the evidence to send Gavin to prison for the rest of his life. Marcus stared at the envelope. He looked at the money. Then he looked at me. I saw the hunger in his face, not just for the money, but for the chance to strike back at the man who took his life away. He picked up the envelope. He weighed it in his hand. Then he tossed it onto the table next to the computer. "Keep your 10 grand, he said. "I will take the $1 million, and I will take Gavin's head on a platter." He spun his chair around to the monitors. He started typing furiously. His fingers flew across the keyboard. "Okay," he said. "Let's look at the structure. The money is in escrow right now. It is sitting in a holding account at the title company." "Yes," I said. "It is scheduled to wire tomorrow at noon." Marcus shook his head. "If it hits the joint account, you are dead. The moment it touches an account with Patricia's name on it, the power of attorney kicks in. We need to divert it before it lands." He pulled up a legal database. He started muttering to himself. "Escrow instructions, amendment. We need a vehicle, a reason to move the funds that looks legitimate." He stopped typing. He turned to me with a wicked grin. "Have you ever heard of a 1031 exchange, Harrison?" I frowned. "Of course. It is a tax deferral strategy. You sell a property and use the proceeds to buy a like-kind property within a certain time frame to avoid capital gains tax." "Exactly," Marcus said. "Gavin set this up as a cash out. He wants the taxes paid so the cash is liquid for him to steal. But as the seller, you have the right to amend the escrow instructions up until the moment of closing. You can declare that you intend to do a 1031 exchange." "I see where you are going," I said. "If I declare an exchange, the money does not go to me. It has to go to a qualified intermediary, a third party." Marcus nodded vigorously. "Yes. And that intermediary holds the funds until you buy a new property. It keeps the money out of Patricia's hands legally. But we need a qualified intermediary we can trust, someone who will move the money where we actually want it." "I can set up a trust," I said. "An irrevocable trust." Marcus snapped his fingers. Boom. "We set up a shell company to act as the intermediary. You sign an amendment to the escrow instructions today, claiming you found a new investment property. You direct the title company to wire the $42 million to the intermediary. And once the money is in the intermediary account," I asked. "Then we donate it," Marcus said. "Or we move it to a trust that Gavin can't touch. The point is, it never hits the joint account. The trigger for his power of attorney never fires." "It is brilliant," I said. It is risky, but it is brilliant. It is the only way, Marcus said. But you need to sign the amendment in person at the bank. And you need to do it without Gavin knowing. Suddenly my pocket buzzed. I jumped. I pulled out my phone. The screen flashed. Gavin Pierce. He was calling. He was checking on me. Silence the room. I hissed at Marcus. Marcus muted his computer. He sat back, crossing his arms. I took a deep breath. I needed to sound like I was at therapy. I needed to sound exerted. I started panting. I bounced my leg up and down to get my heart rate up. I accepted the call. "Hello?" I gasped. "Gavin? Harrison?" Gavin's voice was sharp. "Where are you?" "I called the house and Patricia said you left 2 hours ago. I am at the clinic," I wheezed, taking a breath between words. "Physical therapy. The doctor has me on the treadmill. It is exhausting." Gavin paused. I could hear the suspicion in his silence. He was analyzing my breathing. He was wondering if I was lying. "You sound terrible, Harrison," he said. "You should not be overdoing it. Remember what Dr. Stevens said about your heart. You need rest." "I am fine," I lied. "Just trying to stay strong. I will be home in an hour." "Make sure you are." Gavin said, "I have the new papers ready. We need to sign them before lunch. Do not make any stops, Harrison. Go straight home." He hung up. I lowered the phone. My chest was actually heaving now from the stress. "He suspects something," I said to Marcus. "He wants me home to sign the papers." Marcus stood up. He grabbed a leather jacket from the floor. "Then we have to move fast," he said. "We have 1 hour to get to the bank, set up the intermediary, and sign the exchange order. If Gavin beats us to the bank manager, we lose." He opened the door and gestured to the dark stairwell. "Let's go make you a poor man on paper, Harrison." I followed him out. The wolf and the old man. We were an unlikely team. But as we ran down those stairs, I felt a surge of energy I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the one holding the match, and I was about to burn Gavin's whole world to the ground. The First National Bank of Chicago stood on the corner like a monument to greed. It was a building made of cold gray stone and glass, designed to make you feel small, designed to make you feel lucky just to be allowed inside. I had banked here for 30 years. I knew the smell of the polished marble floors and the hum of the air conditioning. But today I was not walking in as a valued client. I was walking in as a thief trying to steal his own life back. Marcus parked his battered sedan 2 blocks away. We could not risk being seen in my car. We walked the rest of the way in silence. Marcus wore a cheap suit he had pulled from the back of his closet. It smelled like mothballs, but it looked professional enough if you did not look too closely. I leaned heavily on a cane I had bought at the pharmacy an hour ago. Every step was a performance. We stopped just outside the revolving doors. I looked through the glass. My stomach dropped. Standing in the center of the lobby was Robert Henderson, the branch manager. Robert was a man with a smile too wide for his face and a handshake that felt like a wet fish. He was also Gavin Pierce's golf partner. They spent every Sunday together at the club, laughing about fees and loopholes. If Robert saw me signing documents without Gavin present, he would make a call. The wire transfer would be flagged. My wife would be alerted. The game would be over. I gripped Marcus's arm. "Trouble," I whispered. "Henderson is on the floor. He is watching the tellers like a hawk." Marcus squinted through the glass. He saw Robert pacing back and forth, adjusting his tie. "We cannot turn back," Marcus said. "The escrow window closes at noon. If we don't amend the instructions now, the money goes to the joint account automatically." I know, I said. My mind raced. I needed to get Robert away from the counter. I needed to blind him. I looked at my reflection in the glass. The frail old man, the invalid. I know what to do, I said. Go to the far end of the counter. Look for a young teller, someone who looks nervous, someone who won't ask questions when a forensic accountant starts throwing legal codes at them. What are you going to do? Marcus asked. I'm going to give them a show, I said. I adjusted my collar. I took a deep breath, holding it until my face flushed red. Then I pushed through the revolving door. The lobby was quiet. The sound of expensive shoes clicking on tile echoed. I shuffled forward, letting my cane tap loudly. Clack, clack, clack. Robert Henderson turned. His eyes widened when he saw me. He started to walk over his face, arranging itself into that fake mask of concern I had grown to hate. Harrison, he called out. Good heavens, what are you doing here? Gavin told me you were on bed rest. He was reaching for his phone. I saw his hand go to his pocket. He was going to call Gavin. Now, I whispered to myself. I let out a loud groan. Oh, I clutched my chest. I let my cane slide out from my sweaty palm. It clattered onto the marble with a sound like a gunshot. Then I fell. I did not fall gently. I threw myself down. My hips slammed against the hard floor. Pain shot up my spine, real pain, sharp and white-hot. I rolled onto my back, gasping for air. Help! I wheezed. My heart. Chaos erupted. Robert dropped his phone. He ran toward me. Customers gasped and backed away. The security guard rushed over, speaking into his radio. Mr. Thorne? Robert yelled, kneeling beside me. He grabbed my hand. Call 911. Someone get water. I kept groaning, squeezing my eyes shut. I grabbed Robert's lapel, pulling him down close to me so he couldn't look around. Dizzy, I gasped. So dizzy. Do not let me die, Robert. While Robert was busy playing hero, I opened one eye, just a slit. I saw Marcus. He had used the confusion perfectly. While everyone was staring at the dying millionaire on the floor, Marcus had slipped to the far window. There was a young woman there. Her name tag said Brenda. She looked terrified watching me on the floor. Marcus leaned over the counter. I could not hear him, but I knew what he was saying. He was using his command voice. The voice that used to make CEOs sweat during audits. I imagined the words. Ignore that. He is fine. We have a deadline. Section 1031 exchange. Sign here. Stamp here. Do it now or you will be liable for the tax penalty. Brenda looked at me, then back at Marcus. Marcus pointed at the computer screen. He tapped his watch. Robert was loosening my tie. Harrison, stay with us. The paramedics are coming. I do not need paramedics, I managed to say. Just sugar. Low blood sugar. I needed to buy Marcus 2 minutes. Just 2 minutes to override the escrow instructions. Brenda was typing. Her fingers were shaking. Marcus was sliding the papers toward her. The amendment to escrow. The document that diverted $42 million from my wife's grasp into the impenetrable fortress of the Maya Thorne Irrevocable Trust. I watched Brenda's hand hover over the enter key. She hesitated. She looked toward Robert, who was still holding my hand and shouting orders at the security guard. If she asked Robert for approval, we were dead. I let out a high-pitched wheeze. I convulsed my leg, kicking a display of brochures over. It made a tremendous crash. Robert jumped. Brenda jumped. But in her startlement, she hit the key. I heard the sound. The distinct mechanical whir of the validation printer. Ch-ch-ch-chunk. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Better than a symphony. Better than the first cry of a newborn. It was the sound of victory. Marcus took the receipt. He bowed his head slightly to Brenda. He did not look at me. He turned and walked calmly toward the exit. He gave me a signal, a small adjustment of his collar. It was done. The money was gone. The wire transfer had been redirected. When the funds were released tomorrow, they would not land in the joint account. They would fly right past Gavin and Patricia and land safely in a vault they could never touch. I suddenly felt much better. I stopped gasping. I took a deep breath. "Robert," I said. My voice was stronger. I think it is passing." Robert looked relieved and annoyed. "You scared us to death, Harrison. You really should not be out alone." "Where is Patricia?" "She is busy," I said. I sat up. My hip throbbed, but the pain felt like a badge of honor. I let Robert help me into a chair. The security guard brought me a cup of water. I drank it slowly. My hands were steady. "You need to go home, Harrison," Robert said. "I am going to call Gavin and tell him to come get you." "No," I said sharply. Robert froze. I softened my tone. "I do not want to worry him. He has so much work to do. I will call a car service. Please, Robert, let a foolish old man keep some dignity. Do not tell them I collapsed. They will only treat me like a child." Robert sighed. He patted my shoulder. "You are a stubborn man, Harrison. Fine, but go straight home." I stood up. I retrieved my cane. I adjusted my suit. "I am going home, Robert," I said. "And you are right. I am a stubborn man. You have no idea." I walked out of the bank. I did not look back. Marcus was waiting around the corner, smoking a cigarette. He had a piece of paper in his hand. The confirmation receipt. "Did it work?" I asked. Marcus held up the paper. The wind caught it and it fluttered. $42 million, he said. "Transferred to the qualified intermediary. Beneficiary designation updated. Maya Thorne. It is bulletproof, Harrison. Even if they kill you tonight, they cannot touch the money." I took the paper. I folded it carefully and put it in my inside pocket right next to my heart. "Let them try," I said. I looked at the sky. It was gray and overcast, but to me it looked bright. "Now comes the hard part," I said. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Harder than robbing a bank." I nodded. "Now I have to go home and invite them to a party. I have to smile at the woman who wants me dead. I have to shake the hand of the man who betrayed me. I have to wait for the trap to snap shut." Marcus flicked his cigarette into the gutter. "You are a cold bastard, Harrison," he said with admiration. "I learned from the best," I said, thinking of Gavin. I hailed a taxi. I gave the driver my address. The address of a house that was no longer a home but a battlefield. "Drive fast," I told the driver. "I do not want to be late for my own funeral." I walked back into the house and the silence was heavy. It was not a peaceful silence. It was the kind of heavy atmosphere that hangs in the air before a thunderstorm breaks. I was tired. My hip throbbed from the fall at the bank, and my heart was weary from the adrenaline of the heist I had just pulled. I wanted to go to my room and lock the door. I wanted to close my eyes and pretend that my family was the family I thought I had yesterday. But life does not give you pauses. I found Preston in the living room. He was pacing back and forth, wearing a path into the Persian rug. He looked terrible. His hair was disheveled, and he had chewed his fingernails down to the quick. He smelled of stale bourbon and fear. When he saw me, he stopped. He looked at me with eyes that were red and desperate. "Dad," he said. His voice cracked. I looked at him. This was my boy. The boy I had taught to fish on Lake Michigan. The boy I had held when he scraped his knee. The boy I had bailed out of trouble more times than I could count. Even knowing what I knew about his betrayal, seeing him like this twisted a knife in my gut. "Hello, Preston," I said softly. I leaned on my cane. Are you all right? He rushed over to me. He fell to his knees. It was a theatrical gesture, but the tears in his eyes were real. They were tears of panic. Dad, I am in trouble, he sobbed. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I tried to fix things myself, but I dug the hole deeper. I need help. I looked down at him. What kind of mistake, Preston? He swallowed hard. An investment. A friend told me about this tech startup. It was a sure thing, Dad. I leveraged my position. I borrowed money against my future inheritance. But the company folded this morning. The guys I borrowed from. They are not banks. They are bad people. I knew he was lying about the startup. It was gambling. It was always gambling. But the fear was genuine. The text message I had seen earlier about his fingers was real. How much? I asked. 500,000, he whispered. I need $500,000 by tonight, or they are going to hurt me. $500,000. It was a fortune to most people. To me, it was the price of a warehouse. It was money I had. Money I could write a check for right now without blinking. I looked at his shaking hands. A war was raging inside me. On one side was the cold, hard truth that he was conspiring to lock me away. On the other side was the instinct of a father to protect his cub. He was a traitor, but he was my traitor. If I didn't help him, he would be maimed or killed. Could I live with that? Could I let my son bleed because I was angry? I sighed. A long, rattling breath. Get my checkbook, I said. It is in the desk drawer. Preston looked up. Hope flooded his face. It was pathetic and heartbreaking, really. You will help me. Just get it, I said, before I change my mind. He scrambled to the desk. He brought me the leather binder and a pen. I sat down in the armchair. My hand hovered over the paper. $500,000. I started to write the date. My hand was steady. I was not playing the invalid now. I was just a father saving his son one last time. Suddenly, Preston's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. He glanced at the screen, then at me. I have to take this, he said. It is them. I have to tell them the money is coming so they don't come to the house. He turned his back to me and walked toward the window. He thought I was deaf. He thought I was senile. He thought I was focused on the check. But I stopped writing. I listened. Preston's voice was a harsh whisper. Yeah, Gavin. I know. I am getting it now. No, he is writing it. The old man is soft. Look, I don't care about the trust. I need this cash today. Once you lock him up tomorrow, the rest of the assets are mine anyway, right? Just make sure the facility keeps him sedated. I don't want him calling me asking for his money back. The pen froze in my hand. The ink bled into the paper, forming a small black pool. He wasn't talking to the loan sharks. He was talking to Gavin. He wasn't grateful. He wasn't sorry. He was just managing the timeline. He was extracting the last drop of blood from the stone before he threw it away. Just make sure the facility keeps him sedated. Those words echoed in my mind. He didn't just want my money. He wanted my silence. He wanted his father erased so he could enjoy his inheritance without guilt. I looked at the check. I had written Harry, half of my name. I felt something die inside me. It was the last ember of hope, the last tiny piece of my heart that believed my son could be redeemed. It turned cold and hard like stone. Preston hung up the phone. He turned back to me with a smile that was slick with oil. Okay, Dad. Everything is fine. Just finish the check, and I will run it to the bank. You are saving my life, Dad. I won't forget this. He reached out his hand for the checkbook. I looked at him. I looked at the stranger wearing my son's face. I gripped the check. The sound of paper tearing was loud in the quiet room. I ripped it in half, then in quarters. Preston's smile vanished. His face went pale, then red. Dad! What are you doing? I let the pieces of paper flutter to the floor like confetti. I looked up at him with blank, vacuous eyes. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I cannot remember. I stammered, my voice trembling with fake confusion. Remember what? Preston yelled. He stepped closer. The check, Dad. You were writing the check. I looked at my hand. I looked at the pen. My signature. I whispered. I forgot how it goes. Is it with 2 R's or 1? Who is Harrison Thorne? I feel so lost. Preston stared at me. For a moment he looked confused. Then the realization hit him. He thought I was having an episode. He thought his inheritance was slipping away because of the very dementia he was claiming I had. Write the damn name. He screamed. He lunged at me. He grabbed my wrist. His fingers dug into my flesh. He tried to force the pen back into my hand. Just sign it, old man. Sign the paper. I pulled back. I am scared. I whimpered. Who are you? Preston snapped. The desperation and the debt and the entitlement boiled over. He shoved me. He took his hands and pushed me hard against the back of the chair. My head snapped back and hit the leather. It wasn't a lethal blow, but the violence of it was shocking. You useless old heavyweight, he spat. You cannot even die right. You have to drag everything out. He stood over me, chest heaving. His fists were clenched. For a second I thought he was going to hit me again. I saw the violence in his eyes. He wanted to kill me. He wanted to reach into my chest and tear out the money. Then he realized what he had done. He stepped back. He ran his hands through his hair. Fine, he snarled. Forget it. Tomorrow Gavin will have power of attorney. Tomorrow I will take everything and you will rot in a room with rubber walls. Enjoy your last night of freedom, Dad, because you are done. He turned and stormed out of the room. The front door slammed so hard the windows rattled. I sat there in the chair. My head throbbed where it had hit the cushion. My wrist ached where he had grabbed me. I looked down at the torn pieces of the check on the floor. I did not cry. I did not shake. I leaned forward and picked up the pieces one by one. I put them in my pocket. Not as trash, but as evidence. He had laid hands on me. He had threatened me. He had confirmed the conspiracy. I slowly stood up. I walked to the mirror in the hallway. I adjusted my collar. I looked at my neck. There was a faint red mark where his collar had rubbed against my skin during the struggle. Good, I whispered. Bruises tell stories. And this bruise was going to tell a story that would send Preston to a place much worse than a nursing home. I checked my watch. The banks were closed. The trust was funded. The trap was set. Now I just had to survive the night. I walked to the kitchen and pulled a heavy cast-iron skillet from the rack. I carried it upstairs to my bedroom. I wedged a chair under the doorknob, and I sat on the edge of the bed with the skillet in my lap, waiting for the sun to rise on my judgment day. I drove for 40 minutes into the city. My neck throbbed where my son had shoved me, and my heart ached with a pain that no medicine could fix. I needed to finish what I started at the bank. The money was safe in the intermediary account, but it still needed a final destination. It needed a name. I pulled up to a 24-hour diner called the Midnight Spoon. It was a small rundown place near the university campus. The neon sign buzzed and flickered, casting a pale blue light onto the wet pavement. I sat in the car for a moment, watching the window. Inside, I saw a young woman in a faded yellow uniform moving between the tables with a coffee pot. She looked tired. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and there were dark circles under her eyes. Her name was Maya. She was 20 years old. She was my granddaughter. I had not seen her since she was 5. That was the year my daughter Sarah died. Sarah was the black sheep of the family, mostly because she refused to bow down to Patricia's demands. When Sarah passed away, Patricia made sure that Maya and her father were cut off completely. She called them trash. She called them leeches. I had stood by and let it happen. I told myself it was to keep the peace. I told myself I was too busy building an empire to get involved in family drama. God forgive me. I adjusted my coat to hide the bruise on my neck and walked inside. The bell above the door jingled. The diner smelled of bacon grease and stale coffee. It was mostly empty except for a truck driver eating pie in the corner and a couple of students studying with laptops. I sat in a booth near the back. The red vinyl seat was cracked and repaired with duct tape. Maya walked over. Up close, she looked even more like her mother. She had the same determined chin, the same soft eyes. She did not recognize me. Why would she? To her, I was just a ghost story. A rich grandfather who lived in a castle and didn't care if she starved. "Hi there," she said. Her voice was cheerful despite the exhaustion. "What can I get you started with?" "Coffee." "Please," I said. "Black." She poured the coffee. Her hand was steady, unlike mine. I noticed her fingernails were short and clean, but her hands were red and chapped. Hands that worked. Hands that scrubbed tables and washed dishes. Rough night. She asked gently, noticing me rubbing my neck. "You could say that," I said. "Just a long day." She smiled. "I know the feeling. I have another 2 hours on this shift, and then I have an anatomy exam at 8 in the morning. You are a student?" I asked, feigning ignorance. "Nursing school," she said proudly. "It is tough, but it will be worth it. I want to help people." I looked at her. I really looked at her. My son Preston wanted $500,000 to pay off a gambling debt so he wouldn't get hurt. He had never worked a hard day in his life. Here was this girl working the graveyard shift to pay for a degree so she could serve others. "Is it expensive?" I asked. "Tuition." She laughed. A soft musical sound. "It is astronomical. I am swimming in loans. But I pick up extra shifts here and I make it work. I do not have anyone to fall back on, so failure isn't an option." "No family?" I asked. Her smile faltered for a second. "No. My dad passed a few years ago, and my mom's side. Well, they are very wealthy people, but they live in a different world. We do not exist to them." She did not say it with bitterness. She said it with a matter-of-fact acceptance. She did not know that the man sitting across from her was the king of that different world, the king who had failed her. I felt a lump in my throat. I wanted to tell her who I was. I wanted to hug her and apologize for 15 years of silence. I wanted to tell her that I wasn't the monster Patricia was. But I couldn't. Not yet. If I revealed myself now, it would put her in danger. Gavin and Patricia would tear her apart if they knew she was the new heir. I took a sip of the coffee. It was bitter and burnt. It was the best coffee I had ever tasted. "You are a strong young woman," I said. "Your parents would be proud." "Thank you," she said softly. "That means a lot." She turned to attend to another table. I reached into my inside pocket and pulled out the document Marcus had prepared. The designation of beneficiary form for the irrevocable trust. It was the final piece of the puzzle. The lock on the vault. I placed the paper on the table. I took out my pen, the same pen Preston had tried to force into my hand. I looked at the blank line. If I wrote Preston's name, he would drink himself to death or gamble it away in a year. If I wrote Patricia's name, she would spend it on vanity and cruelty. I looked at Maya clearing plates at the next table. She was kind to the rude truck driver who had spilled sugar. She was patient. She was good. She was the only thing I had left that wasn't rotten. I pressed the pen to the paper. Maya Elizabeth Thorne. I wrote it clearly. No shaking. No hesitation. I signed the bottom. Harrison Thorne. It was done. $42 million. The blood money of my lifetime labor now belonged to the girl in the yellow uniform. She was no longer a struggling waitress. She was one of the wealthiest young women in Chicago, and she had no idea. I folded the document and put it back in my pocket next to my heart. Maya came back with the check. "Anything else for you, sir?" she asked. "No," I said. This was perfect. I pulled out my wallet. I took out a $100 bill. I placed it on the table. "Keep the change," I said. "Good luck with your exam tomorrow." Her eyes widened. "Sir, that is too much. The coffee was only $2. "Take it," I said, standing up. "Consider it an investment in a future nurse. The world needs more people who want to help." She looked at me, and for a second I thought she saw something. A resemblance, maybe. Or just a connection. Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea how much this helps." "I have an idea," I thought. "You just wait." I walked to the door. I paused and looked back. She was holding the bill, staring at it with a look of pure relief. She wasn't thinking about buying a new purse or a fancy car. She was thinking about rent. She was thinking about textbooks. I walked out into the cold night air. The pain in my neck was still there, but the pain in my heart had eased. I had lost a son tonight, but I had found a daughter. I got back into my car. The clock on the dashboard read 5 in the morning. The sun would be coming up soon. The day of the party. The day of the execution. I was ready. I touched the pocket where the paper lay. Patricia wanted a retirement party. I was going to give her one she would never forget. I started the engine. It purred like a tiger. "Let's go home," I said to the empty car. "Let's go finish this." I pulled into the driveway just as the sun was beginning to break over the horizon. The sky was a bruised purple turning into gray. It matched how I felt. I had spent the night securing my legacy with a granddaughter I barely knew, and now I had to return to the nest of vipers I called home. I needed one last performance, one last act to make them so confident that they would not see the knife coming until it was buried in their backs. I walked into the house. It was quiet. Patricia was likely still asleep or pretending to be. I went into the kitchen and made a racket with the pots and pans. I dropped a heavy skillet on the floor. Clang. The sound reverberated through the silent house like a bell. Then I let myself fall. I lay on the cold tile floor near the kitchen island. I curled my body inward and started to shake. Not the subtle tremor I used before. This was violent, spasmodic. I let a little saliva gather at the corner of my mouth. I closed my eyes, halfway rolling them back into my head. I heard running footsteps on the stairs. Patricia. Harrison. She shrieked. She ran into the kitchen. She stopped when she saw me. For a second, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Not fear for me, but fear that I might die before the papers were signed. If I died now, the estate would go into probate, and she would have to fight for every penny. She needed me alive, just barely. "Harrison, can you hear me?" she yelled. She knelt beside me, but she didn't touch me. She didn't cradle my head. She pulled out her phone. She did not dial 911. She dialed Dr. Stevens. "Get here now," she hissed into the phone. "He is having a fit. In the kitchen. No, do not call an ambulance. Just get here. We need him stable for tonight." She hung up. She looked down at me with disgust. "Look at you," she whispered. "You are a mess. Why couldn't you just fade away quietly?" I kept shaking. I let out a low moan. I was committed to the role. 20 minutes later, Dr. Stevens rushed in. He was wearing a tracksuit, clearly pulled out of bed. He carried a black medical bag. Gavin was right behind him, looking like he hadn't slept either. Stevens knelt beside me. He shined a light in my eyes. I kept my gaze unfocused, staring past him at the ceiling. He checked my pulse. "How long has he been like this?" Stevens asked. "Since I found him." 20 minutes, maybe," Patricia said. "Is it a stroke?" Stevens pulled out a stethoscope. He listened to my heart. My heart was pounding strong and steady, fueled by rage, but to him, it probably sounded like panic. "Number," Stevens said. He stood up and wiped his hands on his pants as if touching me had made him dirty. "It is not a stroke. It is a transient ischemic attack, combined with the advanced neural degradation we discussed. Basically, his brain is misfiring. The stress is too much for him." He looked at Gavin and winked. A quick, subtle motion. "He is checking out, Gavin. The lights are flickering, and they are about to go out permanently. By tomorrow, he won't know his own name." Gavin let out a breath of relief. "Perfect. That is perfect. As long as he can hold a pen tonight. That is all I need. Can you perk him up?" Stevens nodded. He reached into his bag. "I can give him a stimulant to get him through the party. But right now, he needs to calm down. If he keeps thrashing, he might actually have a heart attack and ruin everything. I am going to give him a sedative. Just a mild one. It will knock him out for a few hours. He will wake up groggy, but pliable." He pulled out a small white pill and a bottle of water. "Help me sit him up," Stevens ordered. Gavin grabbed me under the arms. He hoisted me up. I felt his expensive cologne fill my nose. It made me nauseous. He dragged me to a chair and propped me up. I let my head loll to the side. "Open up, Harrison," Stevens said. His voice was fake, gentle. "This will make you feel better." He shoved the pill into my mouth. He held the water cup to my lips. "Drink," he commanded. I took a sip of water. I felt the pill sitting on my tongue. I knew this trick. I had seen patients do it in movies. I moved the pill with my tongue, tucking it deep between my cheek and my gum. I swallowed the water loudly. "Good boy," Stevens said. He patted my cheek. A little too hard. "Now let's get him to bed," Stevens said. "He needs to sleep this off." Gavin and Stevens half carried, half dragged me up the stairs. Patricia followed behind, complaining about having to clean the kitchen floor. They dumped me onto my bed. Gavin took my shoes off. Not out of kindness, but to keep the sheets clean. Stevens checked my eyes again. "The sedative should kick in within 10 minutes. He will be out cold." "Let's go to the study," Gavin said. "We have details to finalize before the guests arrive." They walked out of the room. They left the door cracked open. They thought I was already drifting off. I lay perfectly still. I waited until I heard their footsteps fade down the hall. Then I spit the pill into my hand. It was starting to dissolve, bitter and chalky. I shoved it under the mattress. I closed my eyes and focused my hearing. The house was old, but the vents carried sound if you knew how to listen. Their voices drifted up from the hallway. They weren't going to the study. They were standing right outside on the landing. "So what is the plan for the company?" Stevens asked. "Do I get my shares?" "Don't worry about your shares." Gavin's voice was arrogant. "Once Harrison is locked up, I am initiating a fire sale. I have a buyer in China for the trucking fleet. They want the trucks and the routes. What about the employees? Patricia asked. She didn't sound concerned, just curious. Gavin laughed. The drivers, screw them. We liquidate the pension fund to cover the closing costs. The new owners will bring in their own people. Most of Harrison's crew are old-timers anyway. They can retire or rot. I don't care. I felt a tear leak out of my eye. It ran down into my ear. It wasn't for me. It was for Big Mike, my fleet manager who had 5 kids. It was for Old Lady Henderson, who ran dispatch for 30 years. Gavin was going to gut them. He was going to take the pension fund I had built for them dollar by dollar and use it to pay for his treachery. And the house, Patricia asked. When can I list it? Give it a month, Gavin said. We don't want to look too eager. Let the old man settle into the facility. Once he is medicated and drooling in a wheelchair, no one will question why you are downsizing. You can sell this place, move to the condo in Florida, and we can finally enjoy the money without the smell of diesel fuel hanging around. They laughed. All 3 of them. A harmonious chorus of vultures. I lay there and memorized every word. I engraved their laughter into my soul. They were not just killing me. They were killing everything I had ever built. They were erasing my existence. Okay, Gavin said finally. I need to go get changed. The party starts at 6. Patricia makes sure he is dressed and looking somewhat human. We need the photo op. The loving wife and the devoted lawyer standing by the ailing titan. It will play great in the papers. See you tonight, Stevens said. I will bring the syringe just in case he gets feisty. They walked away. The silence returned to the room, the heavy, suffocating silence of a house that has lost its soul. I opened my eyes. The room was dim. The curtains were drawn. I slowly sat up. I wiped the saliva from my face. They thought I was asleep. They thought I was finished. They thought they were writing the final chapter of Harrison Thorne. But they forgot one thing. They forgot who wrote the book. I stood up and walked to the window. I peeked through the blinds. I saw Gavin's car pulling out of the driveway. I saw Stevens getting into his Porsche. Go ahead, I whispered. Drive away. Put on your tuxedos. Chill the champagne. Prepare your speeches. I looked at my reflection in the glass. I looked old. I looked tired. But behind the gray eyes, there was a fire that could burn down the world. You want to liquidate my company. You want to steal my pension fund. You want to throw me in a hole. I clenched my fist. My knuckles popped. Tonight isn't a retirement party, I said to the empty room. Tonight is an ambush. And I am not the prey. I went to the closet. I pushed aside the gray suits, the sensible shoes. In the back, covered in plastic, was a tuxedo I hadn't worn in 10 years. It was black, sharp, the kind of suit a man wears when he means business. I pulled it out. Sleep well, Harrison, I told myself, because when you wake up, you are going to be the nightmare they never saw coming. I lay back down on the bed. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in days, I smiled. Let the party begin. The string quartet was playing Mozart. It was a light and airy piece that floated through the ballroom of my home, but to my ears, it sounded like a funeral march. I sat in a wheelchair that Gavin had insisted on renting. He said it was for my safety, but I knew it was a prop. It was a visual aid to show the elite of Chicago that Harrison Thorne was no longer a titan of industry, but a feeble old man who could not even stand on his own 2 feet. I wore the black tuxedo I had pulled from the back of my closet. It fit a little looser than I remembered, which only helped sell the image of a man wasting away. My hands rested in my lap. I clasped them together to hide the fact that they were perfectly steady. I let my head hang forward slightly, staring at the polished tips of my shoes. Gavin was behind me. I could feel his hands on the handles of the wheelchair. His grip was tight, possessive. He was not pushing a person. He was pushing a shopping cart filled with $42 million. Ready for your big moment, Harrison? Gavin whispered in my ear. His breath smelled of expensive scotch and mints. Just smile and wave. We will have you back in bed before the dessert is served. I did not answer. I let a little drool gather at the corner of my mouth. I blinked slowly, as if the world was moving too fast for my decaying brain to process. Gavin pushed me forward. We moved out of the shadowed hallway and into the grand ballroom. The light hit us instantly. Hundreds of crystal chandeliers reflected off the marble floors, creating a blinding glare. The room went silent. The chatter of 300 guests died down. The clinking of crystal glasses stopped. Every eye in the room turned to me. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw business partners I had known for decades, men I had played golf with, women I had hosted for charity dinners. I saw the mayor of Chicago standing near the bar, holding a martini. I saw the journalists from the Tribune and the Sun-Times, their pens poised over their notebooks, ready to document the fall of a giant. They looked at me with a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. They were like drivers slowing down to look at a car crash. They wanted to see the wreckage. Patricia was waiting on the small stage that had been set up in front of the fireplace. She wore a midnight blue gown that sparkled under the lights. She looked regal. She looked like a grieving widow who hadn't even waited for the body to get cold. She held a microphone in her manicured hand. She motioned for Gavin to bring me up the ramp. "Here he is," Patricia said. Her voice cracked with emotion. A perfect performance. My beloved Harrison. Gavin wheeled me up the ramp. He locked the brakes on the wheelchair with a loud click. It sounded like the door of a jail cell slamming shut. He stepped back and stood next to Preston. My son was wearing a tuxedo that matched Gavin's. He looked pale. He kept touching his pocket, checking for his phone, checking for the messages from the sharks who wanted his fingers. He caught my eye for a fleeting second, then looked away, staring at the floor. He could sell me out, but he couldn't look me in the face while he did it. Patricia stepped forward. She placed a hand on my shoulder. It felt heavy and cold, like a stone. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began. Tears welled up in her eyes. Artificial tears cultivated over 40 years of deception. We wanted this to be a celebration of Harrison's incredible career. She continued. He built this company from nothing. He gave his life to this city. But as many of you know, Harrison has been fighting a private battle. A battle against time and against his own mind. A murmur of sympathy rippled through the crowd. It breaks my heart to see the strongest man I know fade away. Patricia wiped a tear from her cheek. But we must face reality. The doctors have told us that the stress of the business is too much for him. His condition has advanced rapidly in the last few weeks. He is confused. He is fragile. And he needs rest. She looked down at me. She smoothed my hair with a patronizing touch. So it is with a heavy heart that I announce Harrison's official retirement, effective immediately. She paused for effect. The room was dead silent. To ensure that his legacy is protected and that his care is prioritized, we have taken the necessary legal steps. She gestured to Gavin. It was his turn. The shark smelled blood. Gavin stepped up to the microphone. He adjusted his tie. He projected an air of solemn duty. "Thank you, Patricia," he said. His voice was deep and authoritative. As the family's legal counsel and Harrison's longtime partner, I have been entrusted with a difficult task. Earlier today, due to Harrison's incapacity to manage his own affairs, we executed a durable power of attorney and a transfer of trusteeship. He held up a blue folder. The audience couldn't see the papers inside, but I knew what they were. They were the papers I had spilled coffee on, the papers he had reprinted and forged. This document grants full control of the Thorne estate and the logistics company to Patricia Thorne and myself acting as co-conservators, Gavin announced. We do not take this responsibility lightly. We do it to protect Harrison, to ensure that the empire he built does not fall into ruin because of his illness. He looked at Preston. And we do this with the full support of his son, Preston, Gavin added. Preston stepped forward. He looked like a deer in headlights. He nodded his head rapidly. Yes, Preston stammered into the microphone. It is what Dad would want. He can't make decisions anymore. We just want him to be safe. Safe. There was that word again. The code word for imprisoned. The crowd erupted into applause. It was polite applause, but it was loud. They were applauding my demise. They were clapping for the vultures who were picking my bones clean right in front of them. They thought they were witnessing a family coming together in a time of tragedy. They had no idea they were witnessing a crime. Patricia bent down and kissed me on the forehead. It is over, Harrison, she whispered so only I could hear. You can rest now, or die. I don't care which. I sat there in the wheelchair. I let my head droop lower until my chin touched my chest. To them, it looked like defeat. It looked like the final surrender of a broken man. But under the cover of my bowed head, I was smiling. I listened to the applause. I let it wash over me. I savored it. Clap, I thought. Clap as hard as you can, because you are not clapping for them. You are clapping for the greatest magic trick you have ever seen. I felt the heavy paper in my inside pocket pressing against my ribs. The receipt from the bank. The confirmation of the trust. They thought they had just announced their victory. They thought they were holding the keys to the kingdom. But they were holding nothing but air. I checked my watch surreptitiously. It was 7 o'clock. The banks were closed. The wire transfer was locked in the system. The intermediary had received the funds hours ago. Gavin put his hand on my shoulder again, squeezing it. Let's get you off the stage, old friend, he said loudly for the crowd's benefit. You look exhausted. He released the brake on the wheelchair. Wait, I said. It was just a whisper, but Gavin heard it. He froze. What? He hissed. I lifted my head. I didn't lift it slowly like an old man. I snapped it up. I looked straight into the blinding lights. I blinked once, twice, clearing the fog that wasn't there. I reached up and grabbed the microphone from the stand. Gavin tried to stop me, but he was too slow. And he couldn't wrestle an old man in front of 300 witnesses. I held the microphone to my lips. My hand was as steady as a rock. I sat up straight in the wheelchair. My shoulders expanded, filling out the tuxedo jacket. The transformation was subtle but terrifying. The frail invalid vanished. The CEO returned. I looked at the crowd. Then I turned my head and looked directly at Patricia. Her eyes went wide. She took a step back, clutching her throat. I turned to Gavin. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Then I looked at Preston. My son. He was trembling. I smiled. It was a wolf's smile. I think. I said, my voice booming through the speakers, rich and powerful. I think there has been a misunderstanding. The room went deathly quiet. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop humming. I stood up. I did not struggle. I did not wobble. I placed my feet firmly on the floor, and I rose from the wheelchair like a king rising from a throne. I kicked the footrests away. Patricia gasped, a loud, audible sound that echoed in the silence. I buttoned my jacket. I adjusted my cuffs. I looked out at the stunned audience. My wife says I am confused, I said. My lawyer says I am incapacitated. My son says I am unsafe. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the folded piece of paper, the bank receipt. But the only thing I am confused about. I continued holding the paper up to the light. Is why these three people think they can steal $42 million from Harrison Thorne and get away with it. I turned to Gavin. Shall we discuss the wire transfer, Gavin, or should we discuss the prison cell I have prepared for you? The party was over. The trial had begun. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. It was the kind of silence that usually follows a gunshot. 300 people were staring at me as if a statue had just come to life. I stood at the podium tall and unmoving. I could feel the blood pumping through my veins. It was hot and fast and alive. The tremor in my hands was gone. The fog in my eyes had vanished. I looked out at the sea of tuxedos and gowns, and I saw the truth. They were not looking at a victim anymore. They were looking at a predator who had just walked out of his cage. Patricia stood a few feet away from me. Her hand was still clutching her throat. Her face, which had been a mask of sorrow just moments ago, was now twisted in confusion and fear. She looked at Gavin. She looked at Preston. She was waiting for one of them to fix this. She was waiting for them to tackle me or sedate me or drag me off the stage. But they couldn't move. They were paralyzed by the sheer impossibility of what they were seeing. I gripped the microphone stand. I leaned in close. My voice when I spoke was low and rumbling like distant thunder. You told them I was fading away, Patricia, I said. You told them my mind was a broken engine. You told them I was confused. I paused. I let the words hang in the air. I looked at the crowd. I made eye contact with the mayor. I made eye contact with the reporters. Well, I have a confession to make, I said. My wife is right about one thing. I was confused. I was confused about who I could trust. I was confused about who loved me. And I was confused about who was sleeping in my bed and plotting my demise. A gasp rippled through the room. It started in the front row and spread like a wave to the back. Gavin stepped forward. His face was the color of chalk. Harrison, he hissed. Stop this. You are having an episode. You don't know what you are saying. I turned to him. I moved with the speed of a boxer. I pointed a finger directly at his chest. Sit down, Gavin, I commanded. My voice cracked like a whip. He flinched. He actually flinched. The arrogance was gone. The power dynamic had shifted in the blink of an eye. I turned back to the audience. My attorney here has prepared some very interesting documents for you all tonight, I continued. He wants to take control of my company. He wants to liquidate my assets. He wants to put me in a home where the walls are padded and the doors lock from the outside. And he wants to do it all for my own good. I laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. But there is a problem with his plan. You see, a power of attorney is only useful if there is something to have power over. A trustee can only manage a trust if there is money in the vault. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the folded bank receipt. I held it up. It looked small and insignificant in the glare of the spotlights, but it was the heaviest thing in the room. $42 million, I said. That is the price of my life's work. That is the price of 50 years of sweat and blood. That is the price these three people put on my head. I looked at Preston. He was shaking his head, mouthing the word no over and over again. This morning at 9 o'clock, the wire transfer for the sale of my warehouses was initiated, I said. It was scheduled to land in the joint account I share with my loving wife, an account that Gavin here has the authority to drain the moment I am declared incompetent. I smiled, but a funny thing happened on the way to the bank. I remembered that I am a businessman, and a good businessman never puts all his eggs in a basket held by a thief. I raised my hand and snapped my fingers. It was the signal. Somewhere outside in a van, Marcus was watching the live stream. He hit the enter key. Behind me, the massive projection screen that had been showing a slideshow of my life flickered. The photos of me as a young man disappeared. The photos of my wedding disappeared. Instead, a bank statement appeared. It was blown up to 20 feet tall. It was sharp and clear. The crowd gasped again. This time it was louder. The header of the statement read First National Bank of Chicago. The account holder name was Harrison and Patricia Thorne, and the balance in the center of the screen was $0. $0. The number was huge. It mocked them. It stared down at Patricia and Gavin like a giant, unblinking eye. "Where is it?" Patricia screamed. She lost all composure. She lunged toward me. Her face was contorted with greed. "Where is the money, Harrison? What did you do with it?" I did not flinch. I did not move. I simply pointed to the screen again. The image changed. A new document appeared. It was a transfer confirmation. The amount was $42 million. But the destination account was not ours. The destination read, the Maya Thorne Irrevocable Trust. The room went silent again as people read the name. They whispered it to each other. Maya Thorne. Who is Maya Thorne? I looked at my son. Preston was staring at the screen. His knees gave way. He collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his hands. He knew. He knew exactly who she was. For those of you who do not know, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Maya Thorne is my granddaughter. She is the daughter of my late child, Sarah. The daughter this family threw away like garbage because she was not elite enough. The daughter who scrubs floors and serves coffee to pay for nursing school, while my son here gambles away his inheritance. I looked at Patricia. She was frozen. She was staring at the name on the screen as if it were a ghost. You wanted the money, Patricia, I said. You wanted it so bad you were willing to drug me. You were willing to declare me insane. Well, the money is gone. It is locked in a trust that you cannot touch. It is protected by laws that Gavin cannot break. It belongs to the only person in this bloodline who has a heart. Gavin rushed the stage. He was desperate. He was acting on pure panic. This is fraud. He screamed into the microphone, trying to drown me out. This is illegal. He is mentally unstable. He was coerced. This transaction is void. I stepped closer to him. I towered over him. Is it Gavin? I asked. Is it void? Or is it a Section 1031 exchange executed by the seller prior to the closing of escrow? Is it a legal reassignment of funds to a qualified intermediary? You know the law, Gavin. You taught me the law. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. He knew. He knew I had him. He knew the paperwork was ironclad. And I have one more surprise for you, I said. I signaled the screen again. The bank statement disappeared. A video file appeared. It was grainy. It was black and white. It was the footage from the camera I had hidden in the study the night before. The audio boomed through the speakers. Once he is medicated and drooling in a wheelchair, no one will question why you are downsizing. It was Gavin's voice, clear as a bell. The drivers, screw them. We liquidate the pension fund to cover the closing costs. The crowd erupted. People were standing up, shouting, pointing. The reporters were flashing their cameras frantically. The flashbulbs popped like fireworks. Patricia covered her ears. She screamed a long, piercing sound of utter defeat. I looked at Gavin. He looked like a dead man walking. The blood had drained from his face, leaving him gray and waxen. I leaned into the microphone one last time. My name is Harrison Thorne, I said. I am not senile. I am not weak. And I am not finished. I took the microphone out of the stand. I held it out in front of me. I looked at my family, my ruins. Get off my stage, I whispered. Then I opened my hand. The microphone fell. It hit the floor with a deafening thud that echoed through the ballroom. Thud. It was the sound of the gavel coming down. The judgment was delivered. The execution was complete. I turned my back on them and walked toward the stairs. I did not look back at the chaos I had unleashed. I walked straight toward the exit, where the police officers were already waiting. Gavin lunged at me. He moved with the desperate, erratic energy of a trapped rat. He abandoned all pretense of the dignified lawyer. His face was twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. He scrambled up the few steps to the stage, his hands reaching for my throat, reaching for the microphone, reaching for anything that could stop the truth from bleeding out. "He is insane," Gavin shrieked. His voice cracked, breaking into a high-pitched hysteria that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. "Arrest him! Someone call the paramedics! He is having a psychotic break. He does not know what he is doing. He is a danger to himself." He got within 2 feet of me before my security detail stepped out from behind the heavy velvet curtains. 2 men I had hired that morning, former military, stoic and immovable. They intercepted Gavin effortlessly. One of them caught Gavin by the arm and twisted it behind his back. Gavin howled in pain, but he kept screaming. "He is senile. Listen to me. The papers are signed. I am his guardian. I order you to release me." I watched him struggle. I adjusted my cuffs calmly. I looked at the crowd, who were now standing on their tiptoes, craning their necks to witness the collapse of the deception. "You say I am insane, Gavin," I said into the microphone. "You say I am imagining things. You say there is no plot." I pulled my phone from my pocket. It was already connected to the ballroom's audio system via Bluetooth. I had set it up hours ago while they were busy picking out their outfits for my funeral. "Then let us let the audience decide who is crazy," I said. I pressed play. The sound of static hissed through the speakers for a split second before the voices boomed out, clear and undeniable. It was the recording from my bedroom. The recording from the moment my heart broke and turned to stone. "Trigger the clause." Gavin's voice filled the room. "Once the money is there, we trigger the clause. The medical report is ready. Dr. Stevens signed off on it this morning." Gavin stopped struggling. He went limp in the security guard's grip. His eyes went wide, staring at the speakers as if they were demons. Then Patricia's voice cut through the air, sharp and cruel. "I cannot stand another day of his stories, Gavin. He smells like oil and old age. It is suffocating." A collective gasp went through the crowd. I saw the mayor cover his mouth. I saw my business partners shaking their heads in disgust. They were hearing the woman who had just played the grieving wife admit that she despised the very air I breathed. I did not stop there. I swiped to the next file. The video from the study. "Once he is medicated and drooling in a wheelchair, no one will question why you are downsizing." The brutality of the sentence hung in the air. Medicated. Drooling. It was a sentence of erasure, a sentence of living death. I stopped the recording. The silence that followed was heavy with judgment. I looked down at Gavin. He was shaking his head, muttering to himself. "No, no, that is out of context. That is manipulated." I looked at the crowd. "Is it?" I asked. "Is it out of context? Or is it the sound of a man who got caught?" Suddenly, the double doors at the back of the ballroom burst open with a crash that made everyone jump. A dozen men and women in windbreakers stormed in. On the back of their jackets, in bright yellow letters, was the word police. But they were not just beat cops. They were followed by men in suits. The Economic Crimes Unit. Leading them was a detective I recognized. And walking right beside him with a look of grim satisfaction on his face was Marcus. Marcus pointed at the stage. "That is him. That is Gavin Pierce." The officers swarmed the room. The guests parted like the Red Sea, giving them a wide berth. They marched up the aisle, their footsteps heavy and authoritative. Gavin saw them coming. He tried to pull away from my security guard. "Let me go, I am a lawyer. You cannot touch me." The lead detective stepped onto the stage. He pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt. The metal glinted under the chandeliers. "Gavin Pierce," the detective said, his voice booming. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering." "Money laundering?" Gavin stammered. "What?" "No. This is a family dispute." The detective spun Gavin around and slammed him against the podium. "We have the ledgers, Gavin," the detective said as he clicked the cuffs onto Gavin's wrists. "Your former associate, Marcus Dane, walked us through your entire operation this morning. We know about the shell companies. We know about the offshore accounts. We know how you have been skimming from Mr. Thorne's company for 5 years. And we know about the $42 million you attempted to steal today." Gavin looked at Marcus, who was standing at the foot of the stage. Marcus didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just lit a cigarette right there in the ballroom and watched the smoke rise. It was the look of a man who had waited years for this moment. "Take him away," the detective ordered. 2 officers dragged Gavin off the stage. He was crying now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the pathetic sobbing of a coward who realized his life was over. I watched him go. Then I turned my attention to the other side of the stage. Patricia was standing there alone. Preston had retreated into the shadows, cowering behind a decorative pillar. But Patricia had nowhere to hide. She looked at me. Her face was pale, her hands trembling. She looked at the police officers who were now turning their attention to her. "Harrison," she whispered. Her voice was trembling. "Harrison, please. You know I didn't mean it. It was him. It was all Gavin. He forced me. He manipulated me. I was scared, Harrison. I did it because I was scared of him." She took a step toward me, reaching out her hand. The hand that held the microphone moments ago. The hand that had signed the papers to commit me. I stepped back. I looked at her with eyes that were as cold as the grave she tried to put me in. "You were not scared, Patricia," I said. "You were greedy, you were bored, and you were cruel." I nodded to the detective. "Patricia Thorne," the detective said, stepping toward her. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit grand larceny and medical fraud." "No!" Patricia screamed. She tried to run. She actually tried to run in her evening gown and heels. She made it 3 steps before a female officer grabbed her arm. Patricia fought. She clawed at the officer. She screamed like a banshee. "My arm! You are hurting my arm! Harrison, make them stop! Tell them who I am. I am your wife." I walked over to where the officer was holding her. I stood inches from her face. I wanted her to see me. I wanted her to see the husband she had betrayed. "You are not my wife," I said softly. "My wife died a long time ago. You are just a stranger who lived in my house." The officer spun her around and cuffed her hands behind her back. The sound of the ratchet clicking was final. Click, click, click. Patricia slumped. The fight went out of her. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. "Harrison," she sobbed. "What will happen to me? Where will I go? I am an old woman, Harrison. I cannot go to jail. I was supposed to retire. We were supposed to travel." I looked at her. I thought about the facility in Vermont. I thought about the padded room. I thought about the medication. I leaned in close. "You said you wanted to retire, Patricia," I said. "You said you were tired of my stories and the smell of oil." I pointed to the door where the police were waiting to escort her out. "Well, I have good news, son," I said. I paused. I let the words form perfectly in my mouth. "State prison is a very quiet place to retire," I said. "The rent is free. The food is prepared for you, and the best part is you will never have to smell me again." Patricia wailed. It was a sound of pure despair. "Get her out of my sight," I said to the officer. They marched her away. She stumbled, her heels clicking unevenly on the marble floor. The crowd watched her go in silence. The Queen of Chicago society was leaving her throne in handcuffs. I stood alone on the stage. The music had stopped. The applause had stopped. I looked for Preston. I saw him trying to slip out a side door. I did not stop him. The police would pick him up later for his gambling debts. The sharks would find him. His punishment was just beginning. I looked at Marcus. He nodded to me. A slow, respectful nod. I adjusted my tuxedo jacket. I took a deep breath. The air tasted sweet. It tasted like freedom. I walked down the stairs of the stage. I walked through the parted crowd. I did not stop to explain. I did not stop to accept apologies. I walked out the front door of the mansion that was no longer my home. I walked into the night where the stars were shining down on a man who had lost everything and gained the only thing that mattered. I had won. I walked out into the cool night air, leaving the chaos of the ballroom behind me. The sirens were fading in the distance, carrying away the wreckage of my past life. But there was one loose end left. One piece of the puzzle that was shivering in the shadows near the valet stand. It was Preston. He looked small. The tuxedo that had looked so sharp on him earlier now hung off his frame like a costume on a child. When he saw me, he ran over. He did not run with the arrogance he had shown at the dinner table. He ran with the desperate, stumbling gait of a hunted animal. He threw himself at my feet right there on the pavement. "Dad, please," he sobbed, grabbing the leg of my trousers. "You have to help me. They are going to kill me. The loan sharks. They know the deal fell through. They know I don't have the money. They will be looking for me." I looked down at him. I saw the tears streaming down his face, mixing with the snot and the sweat. I saw the terror in his eyes. It was real terror. He wasn't acting now. I felt a pang of pity, not love. That had been burned out of me when he pushed me into the chair. But pity. He was my blood, even if that blood was tainted. "Stand up, Preston," I said. My voice was weary. "Have some dignity." He scrambled to his feet, wiping his face with his sleeve. "You have the money, Dad. You control the trust now. Just give me the $500,000. I will pay you back. I swear. I will disappear. I will never ask for anything again. Just save my life." I reached into my pocket. I did not pull out a checkbook. I did not pull out a stack of cash. I pulled out an envelope. Inside was a single bus ticket and a brochure I had picked up days ago when I first suspected his addiction. I pressed the envelope into his chest. He looked at it. He looked up at me, confused. "What is this?" "It is a ticket to Omaha," I said. "One way, and the address of a rehabilitation center there. It is paid for. 6 months. Inpatient. No phones. No visitors. And no loan sharks." Preston stared at the envelope. His hands shook. "Omaha. You want me to go to rehab in Omaha?" "Dad, I need cash." I stepped closer to him. I gripped his shoulder. "This is the only help you are getting, Preston," I said. "If you stay here, they will find you. If I give you money, you will gamble it away, and they will still find you. This is your only way out. Get on that bus. Go to the center. Get clean. Learn how to work for a living. But my life is here." He stammered. "Your life here is over," I said. "The police will be looking for you soon enough for your part in the fraud. If you are smart, you will be in Omaha before they come knocking. And if you are lucky, maybe in a few years, you will be a man worth knowing." I let go of his shoulder. Go, I said, before I changed my mind. Preston looked at me one last time. He saw the granite in my eyes. He realized there was no negotiation, no manipulation. He clutched the envelope to his chest. He turned and ran into the darkness toward the bus station. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't say thank you. But he ran. And that was enough. I watched him disappear. I was truly alone now. No wife, no son, no lawyer. I walked to my car. I got in and started the engine. I checked my reflection in the mirror. I adjusted my tie. I smoothed my gray hair. I had one more stop to make. I drove back to the city, back to the diner with the flickering neon sign. It was late, but I knew she would still be there finishing the graveyard shift. I walked in. The bell jingled. The diner was empty, except for the cook scraping the grill in the back. Maya was wiping down the counter. She looked up when the door opened. Her eyes went wide when she saw me. I wasn't the tired old man in the casual clothes anymore. I was Harrison Thorne in a tuxedo standing tall. "Sir," she said, "you came back, and you look fancy." I smiled. It was a genuine smile, one that reached my eyes and crinkled the corners. "I had a big night, Maya," I said. "I had to take out the trash." She laughed, wiping her hands on her apron. "Well, you look sharp. Can I get you another coffee?" "On the house this time." "No coffee," I said. "I actually came to talk to you." I walked over to the counter and sat on a stool. I placed my hands on the cool laminate surface. "Maya," I said gently, "do you know who I am?" She tilted her head, studying my face. There was a flicker of recognition. Something about the eyes, maybe. Or the nose. "You look familiar," she said slowly. Like someone I saw in a picture once. A long time ago." "I am Harrison Thorne," I said. She froze. The rag dropped from her hand. She took a step back. Her face went pale. "Thorne," she whispered. "My grandfather." "Yes," I said. She looked at me with a mixture of fear and confusion. "Why are you here? Did my mom owe you money? Are you here to yell at me?" It broke my heart that this was her first thought, that her family was only a source of pain and debt. "No, Maya," I said quickly. "I am not here to yell. I am here to apologize." I took a deep breath. I made a lot of mistakes in my life. I let people come between us. I let pride and anger keep me away from your mother and from you, and I am so sorry. I missed watching you grow up. I missed knowing the incredible young woman you have become. Tears welled up in her eyes. She bit her lip, trying to stay strong. "Why now?" she asked. "After all this time?" "Because today I learned what family really means," I said. "And I learned that I was looking for it in all the wrong places." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a copy of the trust document. I slid it across the counter. "I sold my company today, Maya," I said, "for $42 million. Her eyes widened. She looked at the paper but didn't touch it. "I put it all in a trust," I continued. "An irrevocable trust. It is for you, me." She squeaked. Her knees gave out, and she sat down hard on the stool behind the counter. "Yes," I said. "It is for your tuition. It is for your future. It is so you never have to worry about rent or textbooks again. It is so you can be the nurse you want to be and save lives without drowning in debt." She started to cry. Silent tears that ran down her cheeks. "I don't understand," she sobbed. "I am nobody." "You are everything," I said fiercely. "You are the only decent thing in my bloodline, Maya. You work hard. You are kind. You have honor. That makes you somebody. That makes you a thorn. She looked at me through her tears. She didn't reach for the paper. She reached for my hand. Her hand was warm and rough from work. I squeezed it. I don't want the money if it means I have to be like them, she said. Like the people my mom told me about. The people who are cold and mean. You won't be. I promised. Because you have something they never had. You have a heart. And I am going to be here to make sure you never lose it. If you will let me. She squeezed my hand back. I would like that. She whispered. I would like a grandfather. The cook came out from the back holding a tray. Hey, he grunted. We got fresh apple pie. Just came out of the oven. You want some? I looked at Maya. She smiled a watery, beautiful smile. 2 slices, please, I said, and 2 forks. We sat there in the quiet diner under the buzzing neon lights eating apple pie. It was the best meal I had ever had. Better than any steakhouse dinner. Better than any banquet. I looked at my granddaughter. She was laughing at a joke I made about my tuxedo. I touched my chest pocket. The bank receipt was still there. But it didn't matter anymore. The money was just numbers on a screen. This moment, right here, this was the wealth. I had walked into the fire and burned my life down. I had destroyed my marriage. I had lost my son. I had sent my lawyer to prison. But as I took another bite of pie and watched Maya's eyes light up, I realized something. I hadn't lost anything. I had just cleared away the weeds so the flower could finally grow. I was 72 years old. I was alone in a big empty house. But for the first time in 40 years, I was free. I took a deep breath. It is going to be a good life, I said to Maya. She nodded, taking a bite of pie. Yeah, Grandpa, she said. I think it is. And that was the truth. The money can buy a house, but it cannot buy a home. It can buy a bed, but it cannot buy sleep. And it can buy companions, but it cannot buy loyalty. I learned that lesson almost too late. I spent a lifetime building a fortress of gold, only to find I had locked myself in with the enemy. If there is one thing you take from my story, let it be this. Pay attention to the people who are with you when you have nothing. Pay attention to the people who ask how you are not what you have. Do not let pride blind you. Do not let routine make you complacent. And never ever underestimate the power of a man who has nothing left to lose. Because when you strip away the lies and the money and the pretense, you find out who you really are. And sometimes, if you are lucky, you find out that you are still worth saving. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you look at your own circle a little closer. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me share these lessons with more people. And tell me in the comments below, have you ever had to cut a toxic family member out of your life to save yourself? I read every single comment. Until next time, stay strong, stay sharp, and watch your back. Because the wolf is always at the door, but sometimes the wolf is you.